These are the best graphic settings for Xdefiant to give you max frames and low latency whilst making sure your game doesn't look terrible, so you can still see those rats camping in the corner. So to change your settings, head over to the settings tab at the top right, or on controller it's pressing R3. Then you want to be heading down to video and graphics. Don't worry, we will head over to gameplay and UI later on, as there are a couple of things we need to change there. Once you're on here, on video settings, change display mode to full screen, just to give you max frames. Personally, I do run windowed full screen, but that's because I do content creation. It just makes life a lot easier. Then make sure your refresh rate is all the way to the max. So my screen's capped at 165 Hz, and then your display resolution as well is max for your screen. Then heading down to triple buffering, you want to put this on, as it will just improve your frame rate stability, but it does add some input latency, but I think the stability is definitely worth it over that slight latency increase. Then on reduced latency, again, you want this on. It will lower your frame rate, but it will just give you that better latency. If you are really struggling, probably turn this off. And then on NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency, you want to have this on either on if you're GPU bound, or on plus boost if you're CPU bound. Personally, I know my computer is CPU bound, so I've got this on plus boost, but I'll link a website in the description below where you can have a rough idea of whether you're CPU or GPU bound just by putting in your GPU and CPU to the website. Then on to brightness, I've got this at 10 and it looks great, but this will depend on your monitor. Same for contrast, I've just left this as standard as 15. Again, this will depend on your monitor, so don't listen to what anyone else has to say. You do need to play around with these two settings by yourself. Then on to graphics settings, for DX12 renderer, you want this on. Then on to graphics quality, we're going to be doing custom settings here anyway, so you can just skip past this bit. For VSync mode, turn this on. And then for frame rate limit, you want this off. Down to shadows quality, we want this on medium, as you still want to be able to see what the shadows are, so you've got a bit of an idea if someone's running past you, above you or something like that. Then on spot shadows, you want this on high, as this is the amount of shadows that appear within the game, and you don't want it missing out someone running beside you or above you, so make sure this is all the way to the max. Then for spot shadow resolution, medium again is fine. Then for contact shadows, again, you want this on high. On resolution scale, you want this on 100, as otherwise everything else can look quite blurry. And for sharpening, you want this on 100 as well. For particle detail, you want this on low, same as volumetric fog. Then for global reflection quality, you want this on low as well. Local reflection quality, you want off. Vegetation quality, low. Subsurface scattering, you want this on. And then for ambient occlusion, you want this on low. And then for object detail, you want this on 0. Same with extra streaming distance. Then for lens flare, you want this on off, as whilst it might look nice, it's just going to be distracting and stop you seeing people in game. Then for water quality, you want this on low. And then for chromatic aberration, you want this on. And then for terrain quality, you want this all the way to low. Now heading over to the gameplay and UI. First of all, make sure you got the right setting input. So even though I'm on PC, I want this set to a controller. Then for field of view, you want this all the way out to 120. However, if you are struggling hard with your frames, lowering this down does massively impact your frame rate, but ultimately you'll be able to see more in game, so it is a worthy trade-off if you can manage with the lower frames. Personally, I'm not struggling with frames at all in this game, as it's very well optimized. Then for ADS field of view, you want this on consistent, and then skipping past all of those settings there, as they're just controller settings. For the user interface settings, you want the challenge notifications probably set to off, as it will just come up on your screen mid-game, but personally I like to see these things, so I'm setting it to on. Damage numbers, you want this off, as this can be quite obscuring in game. Enemy health bars you do want on, because you want to know how low they are, and it's quite useful. Minimap rotation, you want this set to off, as it's actually bugged where off means on, so make sure you've got this set to off. And then a couple of important settings here. FPS display, you want this on, so you're seeing what kind of frame rate you're on. Personally, my monitor is capped at 165, and even though I've got FPS cap turned off, it seems to limit it to that anyway. Then for ping display, this is quite useful to know, so you know what ping you're sat at in game. And again, network info display, this is very useful to have set to on, so you know whether you've got packet loss, high latency, or just latency variation. So it just helps you know what's happening in game, if it's server side or if it's your side, so you don't get too frustrated. Well, that's all the best graphic settings in Xdefiant. To see the best audio settings in game, make sure you click on the video on screen now, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see more.